Welcome to another episode of the Earnings All-Stars, because earnings season isn't over yet. And I wanted to focus on the big kahuna this week, NVIDIA. But does NVIDIA even matter? I'm not hearing much buzz about it. And it's been the only thing that has mattered over the last 2 years now during earnings season. But suddenly it seems rather quiet. Let's take a look at what is happening behind the scenes with the earnings surprises, the price of consensus chart, what earnings are expected to do, and maybe that'll give us some clues as to why suddenly no one seems to care. So let's dive right in. Let's take a look first at the earnings surprise chart, because that's what we're all about here on the Earnings All-Stars. And it has an excellent earnings surprise track record, as you can see. Just these two misses back in 2022 that go back before the AI revolution, which started right in here in 2023. And this is when you started to see not huge beats, because they kept beating, but raising their guidance. And so the analysts did struggle to keep up in here. So they did manage to get all these beats. But last quarter, just 8%. And you can see here, we're no longer doubling the stock. You can see it's kind of just trading sideways. It's done this in the past. It did it here right after the AI revolution started. It had this whole sideways trade before it again took off in 2024. So year to date, the stock is actually down a bit, which you can see a little bit here. Not a lot, about almost 3%. But the S&P 500 is up about 3% during that same period. So this is a little bit unusual that it's trading under the S&P 500. And that is true over the last 6 months as well, in this period where it's up, but only about 4.7%. versus the S&P up about 7% in this period. So even though it's a huge component of the S&P 500, it still shows that even the Mag 7s can trail the overall index. If they're, weaker, they are going to trail it. So let's take a look at what is going on with the detailed earnings, because this is what's really been driving the stock, right? The doubling of revenue and earnings. Who does that? I say it every quarter. A company of this size, $129 billion in revenue expected this fiscal year, up 111%. So that's just extraordinary for any company, but certainly one of this size. Only made $60.9 billion in the prior fiscal year. Earnings expected to be up 126% now for this fiscal year. We're kind of in the middle of it, so we still have a couple quarters still to go in the fiscal year. But look at next year, still dynamic and strong growth, another 43% on the earnings side and 48% again on the revenue side. I mean, take a look at these numbers. 191 billion expected for next fiscal year versus 129. Now, remember, we just had the DeepSeek scare where people were thinking maybe customers won't need to buy as many of these NVIDIA chips as recently thought. So far, these purchases are baked in to what we're seeing on these earnings estimates and these revenue estimates. But can that change? Is this what's kind of holding the stock back right now? Let's take a look at the price of consensus chart, because it is telling the story. And you can see down here is when we exploded with the AI revolution, started to go up pretty sharp and dramatically. A lot of people not believing that this was actually going to hold or be true. But 2024, they started believing, stock more than doubled. But now here, maybe we're just getting a slight pause again. Now, this stock is not that expensive. Remember back down here, because of the lag in the earnings estimates, and revenue estimates rising and the company continuing to beat, it got rather pricey in this whole 2-year period, trading almost at 50 times forward and even more expensive on a price to sales ratio. And this is when everyone was saying, oh, it can't handle that price to sales ratio. Let's take a look and see what it's at. It's still at 29. Even with this kind of timeout in the stock, price to book is at nearly 50. These are all really high numbers. But take a look at this on the PE side, because of this timeout and the stock kind of just consolidating, but earnings still expected to continue to go up. We're seeing a 32 on the forward PE. That's some of the cheapest I've seen NVIDIA trade in several years. Usually it's more around 40 times historically. So 32 times is pretty cheap. That's almost at the Apple level on a PE basis. And then, of course, the PEG ratio is still really attractive at 1.6. It's not under 1, where we would get a value stock basically with NVIDIA, at least on a PEG ratio basis. But this is still really cheap. The key consideration, which has always been the case with NVIDIA over the last 2 years, is can it continue to do these numbers? Will these numbers hold with this incredible earnings and revenue growth, even for this fiscal year, but into next fiscal year? I've always said there's going to come a time where the growth is going to slow even more dramatically than what we're showing for next fiscal year. But maybe we're there now, or maybe we're not. So that's what I'm going to be watching this week with the earnings. Other of its partners have already reported, like Vertiv and Supermicro Computer. They have been really excellent quarters, which indicates that it should be one from NVIDIA as well. They're all still showing the strong demand and the strong growth, and they are, partnering with NVIDIA. So we should still see it. But the real concern has always been what happens a few more quarters down the line. Will this hold? That's going to be forefront on everyone's mind. So we'll see what Jensen says this week. Will this be a market mover? I don't know. Last quarter was not. And so it looks like it's just going to kind of sit there consolidating. A lot of uncertainty in the market. Its partners like Vertiv and Supermicro have pulled back off of recent highs, and Vertiv has had an all-out sell-off. So will we see the same with NVIDIA? Will this become a value stock? Will it trade under 30 times after this earnings report? I'm going to be watching it all, and I know you will be too. But join me for some other stock charts this week, because this is a busy week for earnings outside of NVIDIA. There's a lot of big growth names that are also going to be reporting. I'm going to have those charts coming up. So make sure you subscribe. Get us all on Zacks.com/YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll get all of our top stock picks of the week, these earnings charts, just a host of other great videos over there on our YouTube channel. And I'll see you again for another Earnings All Stars.